Today we're going to be making with you soft glass. We're going to be making a Goldstone Bluestone swirled pendant. It's really easy to make. You can use it as a pendant, you can use it as a cabochon, whichever you want. Obviously working with the minor burner, also working with 104 Effectra 006, 8 to 9 mil, a couple of pieces of the smaller standard 4 to 5 mil, tungsten poker, stainless steel poker works just as well, graphite paddle, graphite flat or a little lid or something, and then we've got Bluestone Frit and Goldstone Frit. So to start with, place a little bit of the Bluestone Frit or the Goldstone Frit, place the frit on the graphite sheet, and then a little bit of the Goldstone Frit, and we're just going to mix these together. There, choose your finger, get this mixed, and then push it back together to form a nice little tight nice little tight area that you can work on. As I said, minor burner, 1 5 litre oxycon, so something we've all got at home really. Let's get your torch lit with a little bit of preparation. So with one of your 4 to 5 mil soft glass rods, the clear rods, just pull off a tiny little sort of 2 mil stringer, about half an inch, quarter of an inch long, and this you'll use for the loop when you come to put the loop on. As always, get rid of the end, stops any bubbles. If you're going to be doing lots of them, you can pull off, you know, some proper 2 mil, 3 mil stringers, but we're only doing one, so I'll just pull up a little section. And this will show you, well, it'll help you with the making the glass loops, the bails. I'm not saying it's the perfect way to do them, but it's my way to do them. So I'll leave that to one side. Your other clear rod, the shorter ones, the thinner 4 or 5 mil, just tidy up the end of it and just round it over, because this will be, at one point this will be a punty. So just put a little point on it on the, using a marver or a graphite paddle, and then onto the 8 to 9 mil. So bigger the pendant, bigger the rod you use. You can use 16 mil that we've got. For myself, this is going to be about the size of a UK 10p piece, so say about 50 mil. And again, just take off the sharp edges, that gets rid of any bubbles. And then just take a couple of minutes, leaning the glass backwards, let gravity do the work for you. So as you turn in the rod, it starts to heat up, starts to ball up on itself. I mean, there's no need to rush, but it's such a quick, simple design anyway. And this is sort of based on the old paperweight technique, where the pattern is underneath, you've got a large lens, it magnifies the pattern so it makes it look bigger, gives it a lot more detail, a lot more, just looks beautiful. So as we start to get sort of the size of a broad bean, take your paddle and just start to flatten this broad bean size piece of glass off, so that you're creating what we call a Maria, or think of it more like a nail head. That's the start of it there. You can heat up more glass behind it, and again with gravity, leaning the rod back on itself, it'll start to add to the Maria. and then just round the face plate, the face of it, just to keep that warm so that when we paddle it, it flattens out evenly again. And that'll do, yeah, that'll do for the time being. So, just starting to heat the face plate, and then present it to the Goldstone Bluestone Frit, and just pick up a little selection. You're going to do this 3 or 4 times, and little pieces will ping off, so make sure you've got nothing around you, bags of frits or anything else that might sort of melt. Just very gently melt the Goldstone and Bluestone Frit in, and then with your paddle again, paddle it back again, and then once that all starts to melt in, again heat the face of the Murrini up, and again present it to the frit, pick some more frit up. And don't be surprised with these little pieces pinging off. And I would have said at least 3 times you're going to put the frit up, because there'll be little areas of clear that are left showing through, and you can always check that when you've got it in the flame. You can see as it gets nice and red, you can see little areas where the clear glass still hasn't got enough frit coverage. So again, heat it up, get it nice and hot, and tuck it back to the frit. Melting it all in, nice and even heat, flatten it off, and then just give it a fire polish, and then start to concentrate on the front. You might have a little dimple which you can start to melt a little bit. Take your clear rod that you created a little nib on, because that's going to be your punty now, and just warm the tip up. Not a tight seal, it's more like a cold seal that you're trying to create. So this will give you a couple of minutes to do all the work you need to do. That's all the time you need now. So again, just heating the front, and be careful not to push it in too fast. Let gravity do this work for you. If you push the rod in to fill the gaps, more than likely you end up with a little air bubble, which will look like a little air trap, like a ring around, and it just doesn't look good. So turn it around again, and then this little lump you've got, you're going to create the lens with. So again, just even heating, and give it, 30 seconds, a minute. This will start just melting back into the top of the pendant, giving it that great lens, that magnification. Make sure you get it nice and round. Again, just something about flame control. Now just let it cool for 10 or 15 seconds. And you can start to see the frit as it starts to cool down. And then when you're doing the loop, take the rod that you pulled the 2 to 3 mil string on, and I always tend to do the loops are much more larger than they need to be, almost comically enlarged, and that's because I do them in 2 halves. So I do the bottom part of the loop first, great big loop, ugly loop, bend it over, so the gravity's doing the work for me, and then the top part, and then join these 2 together. And the reason I do them so much bigger is that as I use the flame to start to shrink the loop back down in size, it builds strength into the loop itself. And this is where you take the poker and just start to round things over, so where the loop joins together, I say, just again start to watch it. As it starts to shrink down, you'll have the strength built in. Just check from the top, from the front of the pendant, that it's nice and square. And then just warming your rake, sorry, your poker. Give it a little tap, and that knocks your punty off. And then just give it a nice flame at the back, see if there's any marks. And there we go. Into cooling balls, into the kiln. Very, very simple. Goldstone Bluestone Frit pendant with a glass bail. So, following on from the Goldstone Bluestone pendant, Frit pendant you've just made, or you've just seen made, the next one I'll do is some Millefiori pendant. So again, this is very, very simple. So it's 104 Millefiori chips. If you make your own Millefiori or Murrini, that's fine, use that. With the chips, I've made up a little circle on a graphite plate. 2, 4, 6. There's 8 little chips, so 1 in the centre and 7 around it. And just make them nice and tight. You can make it smaller, make it bigger. And using the same glass again, we're going to start off with the 8 to 9mm soft 104 Petra glass. And again, build up this piece of glass about the size of a broad bean. Flatten it down to form the Maria, and then with the Maria we're going to pick up the Millefiori, melt it in, turn it around, take it off at the top, and this is again reminiscent of the old paperweights. So you've got the lens on the top magnifying the Millefiori underneath, making it look much bigger than what it is, but makes a lovely pendant. Or leave the loop off. If you leave the loop off, then there's a cabochon. You can mount it for a brooch or something like that. So just take a couple of minutes heating up the clear glass. Again, very, very simple tools, pair of tweezers, a poke, a graphite paddle, and your Millefiori. That's all I really want. A stainless steel poker or tungsten poker, doesn't really matter. So we're getting to about the size that we need now, so we're going to have to create the Maria, or think of it as a nail head. So start to heat the tip, make sure that's nice and warm, and then just underneath the flame, use a graphite paddle to just flatten this disc out. If it goes a little bit off centre, melt it back down again and just flatten it again. The more central you can make it, the better. Now it's quite critical that when you heat the faceplate to drop down on the Millefiori that it's red hot. If it isn't red hot, you'll end up picking up 3 or 4 pieces of Millefiori, but not all 8 of them. And that's going to be a problem, because then you've got to place them all in individually with tweezers. So bear that in mind. The hotter the better, really. And even when you press it down, hold it onto the Millefiori for a couple of seconds before you lift off, just so that it might help get that bond. So I'm starting to heat the faceplate up now, nice and red hot, ready to present up to the Millefiori. Here we go. And try and be as square as possible, don't squidge it, otherwise you'll smudge the design. So the Millefiori is attached, and then very gently start to bring it back into the flame, because it's still cold, so it can ping off, it can fly about, which you don't really want because you start to lose the design. And at this point, the more you gently heat it, you can spread the design as well, you can enlarge the design, make it nice and big. So using the paddle again, just keep flattening it out. So this is quite a small one. We've done quite a lot bigger with anything up to 20 or 30 pieces of Millefiori, and it takes a little bit longer if you want to do a real focal point pendant. And then Make sure the Millefiori is actually melted really well into the glass pendant as well, because you don't want to have the bottom of it with ridges on where the Millefiori is sort of less proud of the clear glass, because again that will shear off at a later date as it starts to cool down and you take it out the kiln. So just keep melting the Maria so it's nice and hot. Even when it starts to fall over itself a little bit, then just square it up again with the Graphite Paddle. When you're happy with the shape, just remember to flame off any marks from the paddle, and then again with your rounded tip on the rod, this is just a scrap piece of rod, just heat up the tip to do this cold seal. And then to the front, and again you're going to heat up the front, let gravity just melt the glass into the top of the pendant, and then that creates this lens, this magnification, which is what you have to. Don't push it in, because if you form a little air trap, then that air trap will look like a ring of air around the pendant, which is probably not what you're looking for. So keep heating, take it off. Looks quite a big piece at the moment, but left on the top, but once you start melting it in, it's going to shrink back down into the pendant and create this lovely magnification, this domed top that we're after. When you're happy with the dome, make sure it's nice and central. Check the pattern, quite happy with that. And then with your rod that you use just to do the eyes, again this is sort of like the 2-3mm rod, and I said before with the other pendant, this is how I do the eyes. If you want to use Peter's tweezers or jacks, whatever, no problem at all. So I always make the loop nice and thick, and twice, 3 times bigger than what it needs to be, because I'm going to melt it back in, and as I melt it back in I'm putting strength back into the glass. Use your tungsten or stainless steel rake just to keep checking the hole size. Don't want it to close up completely. And if you've got a 2.5 or 3mm hole, it's a really nice size hole. And remember to check it square onto the pendant, because quite easy to be concentrating on the size of the hole and then you suddenly look at the loop and it's off on an angle to the right or to the left. When you're happy, warm up the tweezers, take hold of the loop, just give it a tap so that your cold silk punty comes off, and again just run the flame over the back and this will take any sharp edges off. And then straight into your cooling bubbles that you kiln. In this case it's going to go straight in the kiln.